everyone, and welcome to this special Friday Facebook Live on the Joyful Business Club. I'm your host today. Often I have guests, but today I'm actually going solo, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to connect with you one-on-one. So my name is Serina Bird. I'm best known as the Joyful Frugalista, but I'm also the founder here of the Joyful Business Club. I'm a passionate small business startup owner myself. I have a particular passion in helping women in business, and I really, most of my work is about helping people get over that mindset and that bump. And that's really why I do these Friday Facebook Lives. I also have a 12-week course for people with startup and ideas to help them keep accountable and to move forward in their business. And I'll talk more about that later. And I also do one-on-one coaching, both in terms of the financial space, in terms of financial coaching, and also small business coaching. So let's talk about this topic, how to keep yourself accountable. Well, when I left my sort of high-paced public service job, I'm just going to shut this door. I thought I would be quieter outside, but it's not. Ko Yi Chua, also known as KC, says hello, and ni hao to you. It's lovely to see you here. When I left my full-time, high-pressure public service job, my day was just crammed with so many things. There were so many things that happened unexpectedly. You get a phone call from the minister's office, you get a cabinet submission land, you get a phone call from your boss a few rungs up, and you would be immediately reactive. And you was used to working at this really fast-paced environment. Now, I thought that would really then carry over to my startup phase, because I thought I'm a highly motivated individual, or at least I like to tell myself that. I don't procrastinate. Hell no. Well, yeah, I do procrastinate. I've worked that out fairly quickly. And I think it's a bit like when you have your own startup, it's a bit like when you're studying for an exam, right? Like in theory, you start that study process really, really early. Same as if you are writing an assignment. In theory, you start that research really early. But all these things get into your head about, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do it. And so therefore, it's really easy to have things left to the last minute. And the case of when you are, in a small business arrangement, particularly if you're a sole trader, you may be working from home. You may be in an environment where you're not around a lot of people. And it's not that you are lazy. I shouldn't even use that term. It's not that you don't that you don't have motivation for your business. It's not that you don't have great ideas and you want to take them forward, but it's really easy without some good sort of project management or other tracking mechanisms to sort of almost give up and be like that person who is putting off writing their assignment at uni because it's in your head thinking, oh, I don't know anything. It's too hard. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to keep going. And so it's really easy to either give up, put it off, or just not be as motivated as you think you are. And also when you are making a lot of progress, it can seem that you're not, because it's not like you're in an office where you've got your boss going, good job, you've done really well. Like all those sort of measurements for how we judge success and progress are all very individualized. You're in your own race. And so it's really easy to think that you're not making progress. Like I'm always amazed when I go in and I see people I know who are on a similar startup phase, particularly through the Canberra Innovation Network. People say to me, wow, you're doing all this great stuff. And I'm like, really? Like I don't necessarily see that or feel that in myself because I'm just too busy doing things day by day. But that said, somehow, even though I think I'm a procrastinator, other people seem to think I do a lot of things and keep myself on track. Well, actually, I do. I'm very highly motivated in terms of what I do. That sounds very contradictory, doesn't it? But let's go and nut down some ways that we can keep ourselves accountable for our own startup business and our own business ideas and taking them forward. And I guess the first thing is just to have a little bit of overall planning and some strategic objectives in place. So just even an idea about what your business is about, what your revenue model's about, what is there. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich very famously said, do not wait for a plan. Now, to be clear here, he didn't say don't have a plan. He's got a whole chapter about organised planning and the importance of planning. But what he did say was don't have that concept of waiting for the perfect business plan mean that you don't start your venture. So you can actually do two things at once. You can start your planning as you start your business. The two are not mutually exclusive. I know that there are a lot of different methodologies and courses out there that will, often make you do a very formalized business plan before you start. An example is NEIS, the National Enterprise Something Scheme, NEIS, which works with its participants to develop a very detailed business plan based on a government model. So I think it's an industry.gov.au model. And so you do that first and then you go into business. And certainly when you do the planning, you can often identify some key gaps or problems that will save you a lot of heartache down the track. Like, for instance, you might already have a key competitor in that realm and that you didn't know about. Or as a colleague recently, or a friend recently, found out that her new business model was actually going to be potentially illegal. So you want to find that out right at the beginning. She didn't do that with an intent of, doing something malicious, but, she didn't realize what the legislation was. So sometimes some of that planning can really help to set the scene. And also, if you know what you're doing, then you're more motivated to do it, right? Like, it's a bit like if you don't know where you're driving to, you're going to just sort of drive everywhere. If you've got a goal about where you're going to and what you want to achieve and it's set out in your formal strategy, you're more likely to keep yourself on track because you know where the path is, right? And especially, in the startup phase, says me who has 3 startups, it's so easy to get distracted by shiny things, because obviously I do, because I have 3. But, you really do need to be able to focus. Do listen to your heart. If you are a multi-passionate entrepreneur, there are a lot of us out there. It is important to, validate and listen to your instincts. But it's also important to stay on that path and keep that focus. And a strategy document can really help that. Second is project management tools. Now, I was always a bit resistant to those because I'm a creative person and I like to do creative things when I feel that my intuition calls me. And I must be honest and say I'm not specifically a really, really planned person. But it is really important to take your overall idea of what you want to do and then break it down into chunks. Because what happens, particularly with me, in my mind, I've got all of these ideas of things I could do, like even just website development, thinking of all the different, glitches and things. And they sort of come here and they come there, and my mind is sort of cluttered with all these ideas. So take those ideas, put them down into a project management tool, and there's a number of different ones that are around. And then you can cross them off and you can work through them one by one. And that really keeps you motivated as well. Like, there's times when I'm like, I know I've got 100,000,001 things to do. I don't know which one to start on. I go to my project management tool and I have a handy list there that, is my priority of urgency. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That was the really urgent one I needed to do first. And so then I get into that and do that. Claire Harris says, totally, #shiny objects. Yeah, Claire, you and I, we're both multi-passionate entrepreneurs, I know. Both of us have got many business ideas, some of which are quite complementary. So thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to hear from you too about what project management tools you use and what works for you. There's one that I can't remember the name. I'm going to say Omvana, but it's not, because that's a meditation tool, but it sort of sounds a bit similar to that. Someone on here will remember, probably Claire at a guess. I am moving to integrate all of my different apps within something called Zoho, Z-O-H-O, and they have an agile project management tool. And it works a little bit like Trello, for those of you who are used to Trello. Asana, thank you, Claire. Omvana, Asana, yeah, same, right? Not at all, they are quite different. But a lot of people swear by Asana. I don't use it because I have everything together with Zoho. So, how it works is once I've got sort of all the sort of basic projects in and all the things in, I can set up a sprint. And, a sprint is, maybe what I might want to do in April. And then it works a bit like a whiteboard where you've got, to do, in progress, done. And you can look at that and you can move things around. And that's really useful, particularly if you're working in a team. Now, I'm, sole trader, so you might sort of say to me, but Serina, what do you mean working as a team? But yes, I do have an amazing lady who does some PR and comms work for me, and when I have it all down about all the things that are in my head, it makes it a lot easier when I have conversations with her, and I can go, oh yeah, where are we up to with that? That's done, that's in progress, that's no longer valid. We can sort of conceptually see things. So around about, I'm just trying to work out, I think about 70% of people are visual. I'm a bit unusual, I'm a bit kinetic, but most people are visual. So having a visual tool to visualize all the different things that you do is really going to help. Claire has some feedback here. She says she has a 90-day plan for key priorities in a spreadsheet. You're much more organized than I am. I then use Trello to keep track of all the bits and pieces, plus weekly priorities and having an accountability group. Yeah, an accountability group is key, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So if you not at the stage where you want to invest in a project management tool, and I think some of them are free at entry level. I think Trello's free at entry level. I think Asana is. So there's some around. Zoho that I have is part of an integrated thing. So, as part of my package, I have more than 40 different applications, which integrates all my CRM, customer relationship management stuff really well. But that's why I use that, because it's part of that. But if you're not at that stage where you either want to invest financially or you don't really want to invest emotionally in a project management tool, even just a spreadsheet, just a to-do list, get it down somewhere where you track all the things you have to do and tick them off when they're done, because that's a good feeling. Because otherwise you you just don't get a sense that you're actually doing things, and it's really easy, like I said, to lose that motivation, just like studying for an essay, or studying for an exam or writing an essay for uni. If you don't feel you're making progress towards it in your own goal, and it's not measurable and it's not trackable and there's no due date, unlike a university assignment, it's really easy just to keep putting that off. So when you do have that, that's really important. And also it breaks it down, which is really important too. Like, it's a bit like when I wrote my book, The Joyful Frugalista. Like, I didn't just sort of go, page 1 and I've got to get to page, I can't even remember how many pages there were 300 and whatever. You track it down into measurable chunks, like, chapter by chapter by chapter, and set yourself deadlines from which each chapter is due. So you can do the same sort of thing with your business, work out the things that you need to do by each chunk. So that's quite important. I also am a big believer in setting yourself weekly goals, monthly goals if you can as well. In theory, I do monthly goals, but as you gathered, I really have to trick myself to be more organized. I am and I'm not. I do too much, but yet I perhaps could be more focused than I am. But certainly I do set weekly goals. So I go, this week, these are the key things that I need to do. Every Monday, I do have in the Joyful Business Club a weekly goals section. So you can share your goal for what you are going to work on with others. And let me just say that there's some power with being intentional and sharing what it is for your goal that week. Because, you might get to Thursday and Friday and go, oh yeah, I forgot to do that. And I said I was going to do that. So I better focus on that now, and I had better do that. And particularly when you are at home, in your own head, working on your own goal, having that intention and sharing it in a group is so important. I also have a Friday, a Friday celebration post on Fridays. I don't think it's up yet today. I must do that soon. Usually I will batch share them, but I don't think I've done that at the moment. So I need to check on that. And that's a really good way to celebrate too, because another really good way to keep yourself accountable and to keep yourself motivated is to share and celebrate your successes. Because it's like climbing a mountain. You don't just do it in one bit. It's like a whole series of steps, a whole series of little ridges, and you get to that one and then you go down again, then you go up. And so when we have those important milestones, it's really important to be able to share. And especially for women, because we've often been told to be humble, not to be boastful. And so therefore we often don't share our wins, and when we're not sharing our wins, we feel like we're not making progress, and then it's really easy to give up. So it is so important for us to be in a safe place where we can share those wins of things that are truly amazing and magical. Like I said, in a supportive environment, so you don't have to worry about feeling boastful or bashful or that backlash. Another way to keep accountable, just to acknowledge, Claire has just said celebration is so important. Yeah, it is. It's powerful, isn't it, Claire? And I guess I've identified in some of the sort of personal development work I've done in the last 18 months or so, but particularly the last year, that I sort of, didn't feel necessarily that I was getting that sort of nurturing and acknowledgement and support when I was growing up. Now, like, I'm a woman in my late 40s, but still my childhood in some ways kind of, runs my thinking. And so I'm now learning to, tell myself how I'm proud of myself for the things that I've done. And they may be things that aren't really scary to other people, but they're significant for me. For instance, I didn't get my car driving license until I was 31 years of age. So when I do something like go on a long car trip or drive in difficult conditions, that's really significant for me to celebrate, because that's something that's really, really hard for me. In fact, my mum, who's in her 70s, she hasn't driven for many years. I think it's actually 5 to 10 years. And I didn't actually realise until recently how long that had been. She's actually got a lot of fear about driving. And I think I grew up in that environment where she was really fearful about driving. So I was really fearful about that. So when I do something like that to overcome my fear, in my private life and especially in my business life, I really celebrate it. Because it's often, overcoming those things that, we're fearful, so you are procrastinating with. The other way to keep yourself accountable is to have a business coach or mentor. So having someone who can really, remind you to celebrate your wins, who can remind you to keep on track, remind you in terms of when you're going a bit off track with those shiny objects. So having someone that you really relate to and is really going to help and encourage you and just push you and nudge you along is really useful. Because we are in that environment where we are in our own head and we're in our own space, it's not like you have a teacher or a university lecturer or a boss who's going to say this needs to be due by this time. Sometimes it helps to recreate that kind of structure on your own terms. So having someone who will say, a couple of weeks ago you were talking about something, like, what are you doing now? That can be really useful. And even in your own mind, I find it useful. I do have a business coach I work with. I find it really useful. I'm like, what am I going to ask about this week, and what have I done this week that I am going to be able to report on? So it sort of sets myself my own homework, so to speak. Koyi Try has said, I'm so happy for you that you learned to celebrate yourself. Yay. Yeah, work in progress. Work in progress. But I am learning it's okay, and it's not a form of boastfulness, it's a form of self-love. And the other thing I would say is having an accountability group. Oh, before I do, Claire's got a comment. One thing I've found interesting is that we are often more happy to let ourselves off the hook than others. Weird psychological phenomenon, really. Yeah. We are different to ourselves than when we are others. When I do things like, for instance, writing a job application or trying to sell something, I find it really difficult. Like, even if I'm writing content to, sell a course or do things, I struggle with it a little bit. And so I have identified this new persona or a new person. This is getting slightly off track, but it's responding to your comment, Claire. And I give that persona my middle name of Jane. So Jane is a lovely lady. I like Jane a lot, and I like to be very helpful towards Jane, because one of my things is I really like to help other people. I find it much easier for me to promote other people, to introduce other people to opportunities, to give other people advice than I do for myself. So I've created this fake persona my alter ego, my middle name, Jane, and I like to be very helpful for Jane because, I just find it much easier to do it like for her. And sometimes even like if I'm doing things like, budgets, financial stuff too, it's much easier if it's Jane's budget rather than my budget because it doesn't have that same kind of guilt or ego that's attached to it. So that's kind of an unusual psychological tool that I'm working with because, how I am to myself and how I am to others is different. So noticing that about myself, I've therefore created that persona. So then the next thing is, as Claire mentioned previously, an accountability group. So what is an accountability group? Well, they're called a number of things. Sometimes they're called an accountability group. Sometimes they're called a mastermind group, which is the name they're best known by. And that is a name that has come from the writing of Napoleon Hill. He first mentioned it in one of his earlier books called The Law of Success, but he certainly came back and talked about it a lot in his bestseller, his 1930s bestseller, Think and Grow Rich. And so he noted that a lot of highly successful businessmen, and his book really does talk about businessmen. There aren't that many women in the book, and in the era in which he was writing, there weren't that many women in business. So highly, highly successful businessmen regularly met together to share, support, collaborate. And it makes sense because, men in business wanting to talk about business with other men who understood that, they could help and support each other by cross-referring so that they could give business opportunities to each other. And often, because they're in business themselves, they could see a problem from a different perspective. Like, you're busy in here working on a problem, but someone's going to come at it from a completely different perspective and have a solution for that. And it just really helps when you have that kind of safe and secure and collaborative group where you can help each other and create those synergies. An example of this is I have been trialing a mastermind for some time ahead of the release of my 12-week course, which is now starting next week, my first success mastermind for this group. And as part of that trial, we had someone who was regularly going back and forth to Sydney with their business, mainly for delivering items. And because that she was doing that, she was spending a lot of money every time she went, and she was spending a lot of time every time she went. And so therefore, while on the surface, Canberra isn't that far from Sydney, so it made sense to do it, and she enjoyed her time in Sydney, it was becoming something that was really quite disruptive. And someone in our group who, does a business where she regularly sends things, knew of a company which would provide the type of services, the type of logistics services that she would do. So her saying, yeah, but I really need to do it myself. I really don't trust others. And I don't think my customers would be willing to pay for the postage, to being given some viable alternatives of companies that she could look at, made a huge difference. And in fact, she's gone ahead and she's implemented that change. She's now less stressed. She's spending a lot less money. She's got a lot more time to focus on her business. So that's, one example of where a mastermind can really, really help. It can keep you accountable because every week you say, I'm going to do this, and then you come back the next week and you've done it, and you also get advice and you also get synergy from others in the group. So that is how that works. And I know Claire is in a mastermind group that she works for her, and she knows that's been very successful. I had one earlier this year for a while with a number of people I'd done a course in the Canberra Innovation Network with, and when you get that happening, it really does, because you push yourself. You say, I am going to do this by the time I meet you in next week, fortnight, month, or wherever it is. And therefore, because you've put that on the table, you then commit to doing it. And at the time, it seems pretty scary because usually the things you say you're going to do are things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone. But you do get advice and support to do that from others in the group, but then you come back and do it. And you can see that success, and you can be in a really supportive environment that's going to help you to do that. So like I said, my next course starts next week. It starts on Tuesday. It is a 12-week course that consists of information and group coaching. It costs $330 for the 12 weeks, which works out, I think, at about $26 a week. So, it's less than a meal out, and you get to connect with a group of like-minded people who are sharing that journey and facilitated by me. I would really love to have several of you on board. I am capping it at 6, so it's going to be a very small group, and it's going to be very niche. So I'm wishing you all, is the Sebring one still going? No, Claire, it was only a small group from our particular course, and it got too difficult. A number of them had changes in their weekly schedule, so it got too difficult. We'd moved from the original time, and then the other time dropped off, which is a shame, but it is what it is for whatever reasons. But I do love being involved in them, and I also love facilitating them as well. So I'd love to have some really amazing people like yourselves doing some amazing things in the group, so that we can all grow together. We can keep ourselves accountable, so that we can really, challenge ourselves to overcome our fears and limitations, not get into that, avoiding studying for an exam type mentality, and move forward. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and I hope those of you watching it on replay or on YouTube will enjoy it as well. If you are watching it, please make sure to share some of your favorite project management tools and also some of your tips that you have for staying accountable. Thank you so much.